Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Thursday, August 8th, 2024, and today we are going to be talking yet again about the 2024 presidential debates, as Donald Trump announces today that he is agreeing to the ABC News debate, a reversal in decision-making when Donald Trump initially said he would only debate in a stadium, only debate on ABC News, and only debate under a certain set of moderators for that debate. He now is taking a step back and deciding that he is going to agree to the ABC News debate that at one point in time he said that he was up for the challenge against Vice President Harris. And for the past 3 weeks, it has been very clear he's on and off about how he wants to debate, who he wants to debate, if he wants to debate. But today he made it clear he's willing to debate Vice President Harris. And this comes at a time where it very much seems like Donald Trump is looking for a political opportunity to halt the momentum that Kamala Harris has been gaining on the national and statewide level. What we saw today and this morning was that a brand new A-plus rated pollster, one of the best in the nation, showed Kamala Harris with an 8-point advantage over Donald Trump in a multi-way race and a 6-point advantage in a head-to-head race, which historically, under the premise of Trump versus Biden, Donald Trump in fact did better. What we're finding here is that Kamala Harris is doing really well in national numbers. She's really improving compared to where President Biden was, and the overall odds at winning the presidency have gone up quite tremendously, not only in the political betting markets, but in terms of actual forecasters. People like Nate Silver now have her up as the favorite to win when they gave Joe Biden a 20 to 30% chance at victory. Other websites also have Kamala Harris doing far better than President Biden was doing, and that's good news for the Democratic Party. And so now, with all of that being said, Donald Trump is looking for an opportunity to try to go ahead and pause this, try to go ahead and build out a new media narrative and do what he did in the first debate, and that is win that debate. So Donald Trump, if you take a look at the election data back when he initially agreed to debate against President Joe Biden, this was around the time of May of 2024. And around this point in time, Donald Trump had maintained roughly a 1-point lead nationwide. While it was probably the best that we had seen Donald Trump in quite some time, it was still a bit narrower than where he had been at before. What we saw back in January is at different points in time, Joe Biden was down 4 points nationally. On average, through the months of February and March, Donald Trump was up 2-3 points nationally. And so to see Donald Trump see a reversal in support nationwide, and then end up only being up by roughly a point around the time he accepted the debate, it was clear here that they wanted to use this moment to build political capital for the Trump team, to allow Donald Trump to expand, but also give the opportunity for Republicans to say Donald Trump debated, and that's all he needed to do. And so he agreed to a set of debates, one in June and one in September, only 2 presidential debates. Very early on, we had never seen a presidential debate this early. Neither of the 2 candidates had officially won the nomination. And so that debate performance there was pretty bad for President Biden. But it also came when President Trump needed even more of a polling boost, and he actually got that after the debate. In the immediate aftermath, Trump went from being up just 1 point to being down 2, 3, 4 points. Biden actually being down 1 point to being down 2, 3, 4, 5 points nationally. And on average, right after the debate, being down roughly 3 points pretty consistently until the day he decided to drop out of the race. And so that was good news for Donald Trump. But immediately after, he saw no reason to debate Joe Biden further. After that first debate performance, he considered, and we saw this happening from those closest to him and those who spoke to the press on behalf of the president, that they were entirely willing to cancel that second debate, but also saw no reason why they needed to even do VP debates. When they chose J.D. Vance, they did not commit him to any VP debates, regardless of who the VP was going to be. It was standard that you agree to a set of debates, regardless of who you think it's going to be, because that's how elections work. You don't say, I'll decide if I want to debate them depending on who it's going to be. You decide that you are going to debate because the American public expects that of its elected representatives, of the people running to represent it at the nation's highest office. And so when J.D. Vance made it clear he did not want to debate Vice President Harris, it was on one end an indicator that they were afraid of Vice President Harris, now again are on the presidential level, but also that they did not want to provide Democrats with any opportunity to stop the momentum that the Republicans had. Now, Kamala Harris was in a bit of a trickier situation. She has to accept this first debate, but she set the debate on her terms. If you're looking at it from Trump's lens, they wanted to see nothing else. Allow Biden and the Democrats at the time to gain momentum and build back to where they were. On this time, Kamala Harris wants a debate because she knows she's going to do far better than President Biden does, and any performance relatively better than President Biden can help Kamala Harris, and she's already doing quite well nationally compared to President Biden, and she wants to continue that. And the way she sees the continuation happening is if and only if Donald Trump makes a fool of himself on the debate stage, or she defeats Donald Trump on the debate stage, or a combination of the two. And I agree with that characterization. And so Donald Trump also had his hand forced because he tried to back out of this debate, and many members of the left and the right rightfully called him out on that. And I mean, we saw, and I can personally tell you, when we covered the news that he agreed to the debate and then all of a sudden decided to pull out, it was very clear that it was a very rushed decision. Fox News had not extended a debate offer to Kamala Harris at that point. It was very much he was trying to say what goes, and then what ended up happening was that nothing ended up happening for him, and now he has to accept the ABC News debate. What we found there was that Republicans were saying, you really, really need to debate the vice president because otherwise she's going to continue this momentum. So in a way, the Democrats think that this is going to boost Kamala Harris. Republicans think this is going to allow Trump to stop the momentum. But what we know from historical debates with Kamala Harris, whether primary debates in the Democratic primary, whether the vice presidential debate back in 2020, is that Kamala Harris knows how to hold her ground. She knows how to win a debate. And everybody agreed in the polls that Kamala Harris won that debate back in 2020. And while many Republicans try to build out revisionist history and say that Mike Pence won that debate, not a single data point would suggest that is true. And what we saw was that FiveThirtyEight and Ipsos did a great before and after panel, and they found what we knew to be true when you win a debate is that Kamala Harris's approval rating went up. Mike Pence's went up by 1 point. Hers went up 6 points. She ended up being approved of by the majority of of debate watchers. On top of that, too, we found that her policies ended up being more popular. Her performance ended up being favored far more than Mike Pence. And on an overall scale, by every metric, she was characterized as the winner of that vice presidential debate. Against Donald Trump, it's clear, at least from initial stance, that Kamala Harris will likely win this debate. At the same time, I could see this as something where Donald Trump, should he perform the way he did against Joe Biden, makes a fool of himself just on his own. I think it is entirely possible that if Kamala Harris doesn't have, a killer performance, a knockout performance, that Donald Trump finds a way to mess this up for himself. Because the only real reason why we saw so much negative coverage around Biden was because, by comparison, yes, he did worse than Donald Trump. But Donald Trump on his own was not the same guy that he was in 2016, was not the same guy that he was in 2020. And as much as we talk about age, and we did a lot under President Biden, and we talked about that multiple times, how Americans did not perceive Biden as someone who could serve out a 4-year term, a lot of them see the same thing about Donald Trump. And the age concern is absolutely gone with Vice President Harris. That matters. And so now Donald Trump caving, I think, is an indicator of something that we're seeing on a national scale as well. That internal polling data is indicating Donald Trump is in a really bad position. He tried to say, let's do it on Fox News. The Harris campaign immediately said, hell no. You have an open debate offer. I'm going to show up on ABC News on September 10th rather. You show up, you don't, I'm going to be there. And so he put it all in Kamala Harris's court, right? The ball was put entirely, rather, in his court. He had to make a decision as to whether or not he was going to show up for this debate or make a fool of himself by not showing up. So he tried to offer a Fox News debate. They say absolutely not. Fox News was also sort of in a situation where they were considering, do we make this a town hall? Do we make this something else? Is this really going to be watched? Is this worth our network putting our, selves out there? This rush debate, one that he just decided to announce on his own, not by the network, not by its representatives, only by himself on True Social at a late night post because he was angry at Kamala Harris. I mean, there's so many reasons to believe that Fox News wasn't actually going to follow through on this as well. And now what we're finding is that he is now backing out of the Fox News debate. That was his initial back out on the ABC debate, and now he's moving back to ABC. It's quite confusing. It's quite, a very big whiplash, but the circumstances haven't changed. Kamala Harris is continuing to do better on the national level. We just saw a brand new poll out today across battleground states from Ipsos showing Kamala Harris up 2 on average in these battleground states. We're finding that a brand new poll released today shows Kamala Harris with a 4-point advantage nationwide. The last time she led was just by 2 points. And so you're seeing her double the margin relative to where she was before. Actually, I got that wrong. Ipsos, Harris was up by 3 in the last poll. Now she's up by 5. And so all around here, we are seeing that Kamala Harris, again, is building out that momentum. Marquette University today, amongst likely voters, she has a net 4% favorability rating. Donald Trump in the negative double digits. That is the dire circumstance that the Trump team is in. And the only way I think they see themselves getting themselves out of this is what happened when they debated Joe Biden, and that was winning a presidential debate. But I don't think I'm the first one to tell them that that's probably not how this debate is going to go. But in reality, too, that is their only pathway forward. They have to do a debate. I mean, I've been saying this for a while. If they backed out of this debate entirely, I don't think they would have been able to win this election. They needed to debate. At the same time, I think this debate could backfire in the same way it did for Joe Biden. By comparison, Donald Trump is older. By comparison, Donald Trump slurs his words. By comparison, Donald Trump has incoherent thoughts. All of the things that were used and weaponized against President Biden, and based on his debate performance, made sense to use because that is how bad the debate went, enough so that eventually it led to him dropping out of the race. And so what we found there was that debate performance was so bad perception-wise because it was in comparison with Donald Trump, who was perceived, maybe not in reality, but perceived to be younger, more engaged, more put together. Now, that's Kamala Harris's advantage point. And so I think that's a big reason why the Trump team never wanted to commit to these debates in the first place. Because I think for a while they thought maybe this was what they called the Harris honeymoon. That is the term that had been coined across Republican circles. That this was a honeymoon phase and Kamala Harris wasn't going to continue to do better. Well, if you take a look at the data, she has in fact continued to do better and will continue to do better. And so now he needs to find a way to halt that. I think Donald Trump has really tried to shift away and really tried to push away from any circumstance caving to the Democratic Party. He did so for the first debate, and he didn't like it. He got himself into that mess by saying anytime, any place. But obviously, the debate worked out, at least in a way that ended up benefiting, for the time, Donald Trump, but in the long run, Democrats. Kamala Harris ended up becoming the nominee because of Joe Biden's debate performance. That is the only real reason that we saw this happen. And so now, he's trying to, again, make sure there's nothing that continues to help Kamala Harris, but he's at a point where he can't stop that because otherwise he doesn't debate. And I'd be interested to see where our numbers are after the Democratic National Convention because I do think they will actually be in a far better point than where they are right now. Even though that's in just 11 days, 10 days, I do believe, genuinely, that the Democratic Party will be in a better position into the convention, after the convention, and into this first debate. And it will give Donald Trump the opportunity to make things different. But if you remember 2020, Donald Trump lost all of the presidential debates. And granted, he also lost all of the presidential debates in 2016. But I think this election is a bit different than 2016, and I want you to hear me out on this. I think that what we saw in 2016 was that Hillary Clinton did not win over the same groups of people that Kamala Harris can. She did very well amongst minority voters and did far better than President Biden did amongst Latino voters. But Hillary Clinton was losing one fundamental thing. That was the white working class. Voters that had voted for Obama twice, had even voted for John Kerry and Al Gore and Bill Clinton, that weren't willing to vote for Hillary Clinton, weren't willing to vote for Democrats that associated with Hillary Clinton. Why? Because Donald Trump felt as if he was speaking directly to them, that he heard and understood their concerns, and that Hillary Clinton was too elite, too dishonest. Whatever they thought, they did not want to elect her to the presidency of the United States. She didn't have a running mate. Tim Kaine was not that guy who was able to reel them in. He was a senator from Virginia who many people look at and say was largely chosen for his balance to Hillary Clinton, not for the sake of electability. That's in direct contrast with Tim Walz, who sure, absolutely provides balance, but has a level of electability in a region where Democrats need it the most. Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania are going to be some of the states that Democrats are going to be focusing on with the most amount of money, I think we will see across this election. I think those three states will get the most amounts, and then we'll see the final four, North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada, receive similar amounts, but not nearly as much. Tim Walz helps a lot in that region that Democrats are likely going to invest in. And I think also the Trump campaign realizes that. Kamala Harris, since launching her candidacy 3 weeks ago, has yet to make a major misstep, one that Republicans and Democrats can universally agree upon and say, that's bad news for Kamala Harris. Sure, the debate was one of those moments, but Kamala Harris probably won't have a debate like that. Kamala Harris probably won't have a circumstance in which she is at all in a bad position, perception-wise, in her campaign performance, whether at rallies or at the convention or on the debate stage. And the Trump team for a while seems to have known that, but they don't care. Or at least in a way, they think it's worth taking the risk, that it's more important for Donald Trump to debate at all than to be beat at a debate. And maybe they're right, but they could also be dead wrong. There isn't a perfect science here, and I don't think that we should claim to know that there is. Debates are a very interesting thing, and some political scientists say that debates don't even matter at all. But I genuinely do think that they do. They help build a narrative. They help build momentum. They help expand upon where Democrats or Republicans are or serve to be very detrimental to them. Anyone who tells you a debate doesn't matter, just take a look at Joe Biden's candidacy and tell me that a debate doesn't matter, because debates do matter. And I think what we will find is that Kamala Harris, because Donald Trump is now caving to all of the concerns of the Harris campaign without fail, going to this ABC News debate after very publicly calling on a Fox News debate and withdrawing from this ABC News debate, saying he has ongoing litigation with George Stephanopoulos, ongoing litigation with the network. So many different excuses, so many different reasons why he couldn't debate. Then the poll numbers come out, and now he has to debate. And so he agrees to debate. But it makes all of those other things seem like they were just excuses, because in reality, they were. Trump and Harris are going to have a very interesting debate in just around a month and 2 days from now. I do believe that Kamala Harris will do far better than Joe Biden, and that's all she really needs to do. She will likely win this debate, as she did in 2020 in the vice presidential debate against a candidate who arguably had far more presidential qualities and just was perceived as a more skilled and eloquent speaker and debater. I mean, Mike Pence hosted a radio show. He knows how to talk to the public, especially in terms of voice and candidates. But overall, this Trump versus Harris debate is one that I think will be for the history books. I think it'll be more well-watched than the first debate against Joe Biden, and I think it'll be very funny in a way that is quite concerning for American politics, but also genuinely addressing the current state of the nation. A lot of American politics has become far more funny than it really should be in terms of messing with our futures. Overall, I've said that multiple times, and note, Donald Trump and Kamala Harris will have probably very vastly different takeaways after this first presidential debate. But I could see a circumstance in which it helps Trump and a circumstance in which it helps Harris. On the overall net, though, Kamala Harris is up today as Donald Trump backs out of his Fox News proposal and agrees to an ABC News debate. After quite a few days now of saying adamantly that he will not debate her on ABC News, he decides to cave because the polling numbers say he has to. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the top left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch, and then a playlist for my 2024 presidential election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow.